Rocket League is a game that really hasn't changed much since 2015, and most of its appeal is due to that fact. No update is going to drastically break the meta or make the way you play suddenly redundant, but key features around the core gameplay loop have come a long way since the beginning, and not all of those changes have been well received. Today we're going to look at the 5 most controversial updates in Rocket League history. Now, I'm not talking about the multiple times updates have broken the game, as I've already covered most of those in a previous video. No, these are features and changes that were deployed on purpose by the devs. In this video, I will try and explain the reasons behind these unpopular updates, explore the resulting community backlash, and finally determine who was right, Psyonix or the players. But first, once again, today's video is sponsored by the Rocket League Tracker app. This free companion program is a must-have for serious and casual players alike. The PC app has many useful built-in features, such as pre-game info about your opponents and teammates, as well as detailed personal statistics so you can track your match history and performance live. But the best part is, this tool is completely free. Just use my link in the description to download and install, and the RL Tracker overlay will launch automatically whenever you start a match. Alternately, for you console players, there's also a mobile version of the app available on both Apple and Google Play stores. So big thanks to the Rocket League Tracker app for sponsoring this video. In July 2017, Psyonix implemented a Hitbox Standardization which separated cars into 5 types. The purpose? To allow players the freedom to pick different cars while not having to worry about losing muscle memory or dealing with so-called inferior hitboxes. And initially, the update was well received. In my search, I really didn't find any major pushback from the community, besides an issue with the Batmobile that resulted in the car being reverted back to its original settings. But as time passed, some in the community started to resent the changes. Despite the fact that standardization was originally designed to counter things like the Octane meta, some blamed the update for the lack of variety in their matches. Others thought they were missing out on some special car powers that allegedly existed before the changes. New players that had never even played the game before standardization could be found lamenting for an era when cars all had their own hitboxes that supposedly matched the visual models perfectly. Yes, despite being welcomed at the time, Hitbox Standardization is now considered a very controversial update that continues to hurt the game. But is that label really deserved? Here's an example of a car hitbox today. Now, when a new player is told that cars used to match their hitboxes, they may picture something like this. But the reality, of course, is not that drastic. Yep, that's it. This is what people are upset about. When I plotted all the hitboxes in the game before standardization and compared their stats after the patch, it was interesting to find that most of the dimensions didn't even change. It's hard to give the unique hitbox complaints any merit when you see that pre-patch, there were already many cars that shared the same stats. And most of the adjustments came down to 1 or 2 Unreal units, or about 1%. Were there outliers? Of course. The red boxes indicate changes of 3% or more. So maybe if you were a Bone Shaker or Esper main, you could justify being a little upset. The DeLorean also stands out here too, but we can give that one a pass as it was supposed to be the Dominus hitbox. The point I'm trying to make here is we didn't really lose what a lot of people think we lost. While it's true some car hitboxes these days don't match their visual models very well, that was also true before standardization. In fact, the whole idea that this really matters is countered by the reality that some of the most popular cars have similar issues. With the addition of the Merc hitbox in 2020, I think the 6 types cover the spectrum of hitbox possibilities pretty well, while at the same time removing the headache of potential balance issues or pay-to-win claims that differing hitboxes would create. Do I agree that Psyonix always picks the right type of hitbox for their cars? Well, no. But if the Honda Civic taught us anything, it's that even poorly matched cars can be perfectly viable. Thus, in conclusion, I will say the hate for standardization in Rocket League is undeserved. Yes, it's fine if you think hitboxes should match their visual models better, but claims that they used to, or that every car had its own hitbox at one time, are exaggerations not based on fact. For the 3 years between 2016 and 2019, cosmetics in Rocket League were mostly obtained through a loot crate system. For the cost of about $1, you could open a crate and get a random item. Drop rates were based on rarity, with the best items, black market decals, having just a 1% chance, meaning statistically, the average BMD would take 100 keys to get. This all changed in December 2019, when crates were replaced with blueprints and an item shop was added to the game. But right from the start, a lot of people were not happy with this change. I think this Reddit user in the release day mega thread summed up the community's first impression pretty well, and he even used the proper posting format. Bug: everything costs too much. Platform: all. The community backlash was so strong that Psyonix was forced to respond, and a week later they slashed most of the rarity pricing model by half and refunded credits to any that had made a purchase. But that was only part of the issue. Many players loved crates and were very angry about having them taken away, even going so far as to start petitions to try and get them back. Traders complained about blueprints changing the economy and how the item shop affected trade values. Yes, in the eyes of some, this update didn't just ruin trading, it ruined the whole game. Players down to this day still wonder why crates were removed and even beg for their return. But the reality of the situation is Epic and Psyonix really didn't have a choice. Even months before the update, random loot crates were already banned by governments in both Belgium and the Netherlands, with more EU nations expected to follow. Then, in 2021, Epic paid out millions in cash and game credit as part of a class action settlement for violating consumer protection laws in both Rocket League and Fortnite. Even now, the after effects of the crate years are still being felt, as I recently received a notice for a Canadian version of this very same lawsuit. So, no, this change wasn't an act of greed or Epic trying to ruin trading. In fact, it also explains the reason we can't have randomized rocket passes anymore either. While it doesn't excuse the current pricing of some items or the artificial scarcity of a rotating item shop, I think understanding that Psyonix had no choice in the matter takes away at least some of the controversy around the removal of crates in Rocket League. This is the story of the first hard reset in Rocket League. June 20th, 2016 was the start of Season 3, the original Season 3. The game is now 1 year old, and Psyonix decides that's a good time to implement a full skill wipe. Taking into account how mechanical skill and game sense was improving, and the fact that the ranking system as a whole was still being studied and tweaked, a fresh start made sense. But there would be a price to pay. The result of this hard reset was a logjam at the bottom of the ranks that would end up taking months to work itself out. Even if you were a champ that managed to win all 10 of your placement games, the highest you could hope to get was maybe Challenger 2, which would be about gold these days. Meanwhile, you'd be holding down the players that belong in the Blue Star ranks, while simultaneously getting beat down yourself by GCs trying to make their way back to the top. While it could be exciting for a low level to match against a pro, the general consensus was that most of the low ranks were having a very bad time, and the data backed that up. 4 months into the season, the top 5 ranks were helped by just 1% of the player base, and even some pros hadn't managed to get back to GC yet. As a result, Psyonix was moved to make an adjustment and bring the distribution up to a more reasonable level. When the season finally came to an end 9 months later, the devs seemed to agree with the players, and the announcement for Season 4 stated, "We do not want to repeat the matchmaking frenzy when we did a full skill wipe. Average match quality was poor as the entire player base churned through the placement matches." Yes, this would be the first and last time Rocket League would ever do a hard reset. But despite this controversial and turbulent period in Rocket League's history, as time went on, the community's feelings about hard resets started to change. As seasons and years went by, Reddit posts suggesting Rocket League needed another hard reset began to increase. Even today, it still gets brought up from time to time as an answer to Rocket League's matchmaking issues. Though I'd say most players don't really know what they're asking for. Hard resets are often presented as a way to deal with smurfs or a way to fix poor teammates, while ignoring the fact that such an update will very likely put you in situations where you have low-ranked teammates while having to play against people much better than you. And it might be like that for weeks. Yes, a full skill wipe is typically a painful experience for all but the highest ranks of the game. Thus, understandably, even 7 years later, it's one that Psyonix is reluctant to revisit. We now move on to something a little more recent that I'm sure some of you still have strong opinions about. In August 2021, Psyonix implemented matchmaking penalties to the casual playlist, and in response, the subreddit exploded. Well, not exactly, but it was an entertaining time at least. I think Reddit user Sage Leader described it best when they said, "This sub is quickly turning into a list of examples of all the possible things that might happen in someone's mundane life." Yes, the casual lever fan fictions being written in the comments of some of these posts got pretty ridiculous. Many of them were not far off this great satirical post in which someone claimed their grandma was falling down every time their team got scored on, and they couldn't help her because of the new update. Devin from Psyonix even commented on the post, only to have his lighthearted response downvoted to oblivion because apparently he needed to read the room. Yeah, it was getting pretty heated. Some players even resorted to quoting the dictionary definition of casual, like somehow by using that word, Psyonix was obligated to abide by its perceived meaning in Rocket League. But I think Devin did have a good response. casual was never intended to be disposable. In the end, I feel like a lot of the backlash was due to ignorance about how the system worked. As explained in this comment from Nick Tesla, leaving casual matches is still possible, and the goal of the update was only to discourage people from leaving multiple matches a day. And even then, ban lengths were reasonable enough that should you get one, it would probably be over by the time you finish dealing with your issue. We are now over a year past this update, and just recently I saw yet another post complaining about casual bans hit the front page of the subreddit. With almost 1,400 points and a 70% upvote rate, it seems there is a lot of people still upset with these changes. But what was more interesting is most of the 570 people that chose to comment were instead praising the ban system, some of them even saying they were against it initially, but have since changed their mind. I don't doubt that the introduction of casual bans caused some players to stop playing casual or even leave the game entirely. While that would not be the result Psyonix would be hoping for, if players that regularly leave games stop queuing because of a ban system, then the amount of serial leavers should go down as a result, and thus the intent of the update would be achieved. Basically, I'm saying if you're someone that got pissed off by this change and stopped playing casual, that action probably played a role in making this update a success. Tucked into the patch notes of the very same update that introduced casual bans was the removal of a feature that had been in the game since launch: online player counts. Of course, immediately on Reddit, the theory started to fly. Rocket League must be dying, and Epic is trying to hide it. Well, it's true that in the summer of 2021, the popularity of the game had dropped a lot since its free-to-play peak. That explanation doesn't really tell the whole story. There is good reason almost no major title these days shows online player counts like Rocket League did. Public display of that data provides almost zero benefit, and instead can create unneeded and unfounded drama whenever numbers fluctuate or are misinterpreted. Thus, from a company standpoint, removing that catalyst does make sense. Now, some suggested that the change was to hide the negative impact of casual bans, but I would argue Psyonix wouldn't have added casual bans if they didn't expect the results to be a net positive. Either way, as seen in the screenshot I was able to get of player population for the month following the update, there ended up being nothing that needed hiding. I will agree that the good, great, amazing display was a pretty bad idea. Honestly, it would have been better just to remove it altogether and tell us if the servers are online or maybe estimated queue times. Just a clean break from displaying player numbers would probably have resulted in a lot less backlash. But then again, we would have also missed out on a lot of great memes. Over a year later, and the good, great, amazing joke still hasn't gotten old. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of some of the most controversial updates in Rocket League history. I did my best to give you both sides of these issues, but please recognize that all opinions and theories are my own personal thoughts. Was I completely wrong on any of them? Let me know in the comments below. Before you leave, make sure you like the video, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.